Morning. I think that Whitney will try to rejoin us and hopefully she can work out the solar. I'm going to send her a quick email to try to just call us so she can at least call in if that's not working, because I don't know if the problem is on her end or our end. Good morning. How is everyone?
Good.
Here she is. She's joined us. Whitney, can you hear us?
Okay.
How's this?
Can anybody hear me?
Yep.
I hear a little bit. It's not, doesn't sound great.
I heard her.
I think you need to sing us a song and then we'll really be able to test your audio.
How's it sound now?
I heard her say, "Can you hear me?" And then
Is the problem that you can't hear us, or we're not hearing you?
You hear me now?
Can hear you.
yes.
Okay, you can hear me and I can't hear you. That's half of
I
it.
hear it cut out on my end. So I start to hear it and then it cuts out.
Wonder if she could log on with the computer and then call in with the phone. Maybe between the two could do.
Okay, somebody say something? Oh, no, Billy's talking. I can't hear him.
Yeah.
Great.
Whitney, are you able to call us?
On with your phone, it might work.
Okay. You got my email. Is there, we don't really have a chat here, so, hopefully she'll get that message so we can keep moving on. Thanks for your patience. I am positively slammed with building and land use and everything, so sorry that I had to start at 6 in the morning and start working on stuff this morning to get the agenda stuff out to you guys. I also started to do some initial just looking at other municipalities in addition to what Erica had screenshotted, what Karen had provided regarding building height. Whitney, your noise is in the meeting.
That means we can hear you.
But it does mean we can hear you. Are you hearing us? Oh, now she muted. Okay. Okay. So as you could see from the agenda I sent, we will be talking about first a little rundown, some highlights from the Clean Energy Solutions Summit that Karen, Erica, Larry, and myself did yesterday. That was pretty fun. It was the majority of the day. And we talked solutions. We were trying to consider trying to do something in Nederland. And
Cynthia,
ultimately,
I'm sorry to
yes.
interrupt you, but can we go over the minutes first? I have a correction.
Oh, okay. I mean, I didn't write minutes. It's just a summary recap.
A recap.
I can certainly add to, let me just pull it up and I'll add to what I sent. Okay, so this was on the most recent email that I sent that I had bulked up the rest of the meeting. Okay, let me just type some notes so I can add that. Go ahead.
Okay, this is in the brief recap. The last sentence reads, Karen likes use by right quality for regulations and would like to base the decision on public feedback derived from Nederland planning process going before other boards for feedback. I don't recall saying anything about Nederland planning process or basing our decision on public feedback.
That's what I wrote with my pen, Karen, under your section. So I mean, that's like exactly.
This happened at the last meeting too, where you said that I was going to research other municipalities. I never said that. I asked if you could do that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you correctly.
So My preference, so I would like you to strike that last sentence. And my preference is to allow roof-mounted solar panels to exceed the maximum building height by a certain amount, say 5 feet. So it's not use by right without limitations.
That's what I heard. I think on the public comment, what you said, you just look forward to the more public meetings where we will actually hear from the public. So
Yes,
But-
when we bring this
Feedback.
this
Okay.
ordinance to the Planning Commission and the Board of Trustees and possibly the zoning group,
I
we
think-
will get public feedback.
Sure.
That
Okay.
is just
Just gotta change. I don't have to
standard.
strike
Okay.
anything, Karen, because it's not the minutes. So I'll just make the change.
Okay.
Just so we know that there's clarification. Thanks for that. I appreciate you.
Okay,
You clarifying. I'm sorry, I misheard you.
no worries.
I'm just running in a million directions at once, guys. So thanks for your tolerance.
I
You
understand.
were baking bread, Karen, so you kept coming in and out of reception. So it's right in here.
My bad. I'm in my office this morning. I'm gonna
No,
say
I'm just
that.
kidding. I don't
No
care.
bread.
I'm gonna do dishes here soon. So, yeah.
I think it was only bad that we couldn't smell it and taste it. That was the only complaint that I had about you baking bread. But I'm a bread baker, so okay. I will note Karen's correction at the end of the recap.
I sent that
And
to you in email, so you can just cut and paste.
oh, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you. Erica, do you want to recap Clean Energy Solutions Summit? Do you want to give some thoughts on that, and then Karen can?
Sure. So,
Thanks.
Cynthia, did we invite Larry to this meeting? Was he on the
I do believe I did.
Last week.
check-in?
Take a look at the email that I sent. Yeah, I went to Larry, and it went to Wolfie Wolf, but we haven't seen them, so.
Okay, perfect. I just made me think about that because he was at the SES summit yesterday as well. So
I think I noted that in the what I sent this morning, that I noted Larry was there.
yeah,
Um,
I saw that. So thanks, Cynthia. So yeah, we had an all-day clean energy solution summit. Nederland was one of a handful of communities or challenges, I guess pioneers that were invited to the meeting with energy challenges. And so we had an initial introduction by someone from SIA, and they gave a great rundown of the solar industry. I took a handful of photos of their slides, and we'll get the slides in person, which I think would be helpful to share with all of you, because it was really interesting as far as, the increased costs of solar at this point, but they're expecting that to be transient, and just some of the challenges that the solar industry is facing right now. And then we jumped into this breakout group, and it was myself, Cynthia, Karen, and Larry. And we had 3 representatives from US Solar. We had 2 representatives from the PRE engineering firm that's local. And we had 1 representative of a labor union. And they were really focused on how to increase solar jobs with the project that we were exploring. And I really wanted to focus on our 100% goal for this summit, but that was a little too big. So we decided to really break it down and just focus on a community solar garden, which is something the community's looked at for years. So the challenge that was presented to this group of experts was a small community limited in space, which we are, that wants to meet their energy goals through a community solar garden project with a local array, right? And we know that we can't have the full array in Nederland. We just don't have the space. There's a couple opportunities where if everything aligned, perhaps we can make it work. But we were really talking about doing this small array that would be like a demonstration in town, and then a much larger array somewhere else. So pretty quickly after some discussion, we landed on this idea of, perhaps US Solar or another developer, which of course we'd have to go for RFP and see who we'd actually want to work with, could potentially bid with Excel in November for the community solar garden bid for a 5 megawatt community solar garden project for the town of Nederland. Nederland would not be putting any money up front for this project. We don't really have the money, nor do we have the capacity to really manage a project of this scale. The idea is that a developer like US Solar potentially would upfront the costs and would really kind of lead the charge. And then Nederland would be tasked for finding the subscribers. And 5 megawatts would be about half of the energy that we need to transition all of the zip code to renewable energy for our electric grid. The goal really is for the town. So that's kind of its own challenge. And we'd ask for a certain period of time to get those subscribers, whether that's 3 months or 6 months, whatever that would be. And then we would have to open it up to a larger conversation and a larger area for more subscribers if we don't have it fully subscribed at that point. So a couple challenges would be, first, having a competitive bid for the RFP process with community solar gardens through Excel. Excel just cut their megawatt projects that they're going to accept this year to about half of what they have in the past. It's about 35 megawatts for all of Colorado Excel territory. So that means we need to be cheap, right? We need to be one of the most cost competitive projects. So that would also mean we can't do it local, and probably not in Boulder County as a whole. But now with the ability for community solar gardens to be in anywhere in Colorado Excel territory, that helps quite a bit. So we could be in a much cheaper area as far as land costs and being able to buy a large plot of land for that 5 megawatt array. Random, Karen, but Excel, their community solar gardens page still says that it has to be an adjacent county. So they have not updated that since legislation has changed, which I thought was interesting. But I guess I'll couch it at that. I would love any additions from Karen and Cynthia. And then if anyone has questions, Melody, this is something we have talked about for years. And I left this meeting being really excited that we have a developer that would like to work with us. Of course, we'd have to put it out to bid and see if there's other developers that might have a more competitive bid and better rate for Nederland residents. But it was exciting to hear that they would like to work with us, because one of the big challenges of community solar gardens is finding subscribers. So if they go on to this project with us and we're tasked with finding subscribers, that can bring down the cost for residents that subscribe.
Did they say it has to be in Colorado? The array has to be in Colorado, or in just anywhere in their territory?
It has to be in Excel, Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in an adjacent county?
Pardon me?
And in an adjacent county?
No, that has changed. No longer has to be an adjacent county, but that is what they're still advertising on the Excel Community Solar Garden page, which is no longer accurate.
Wow, that was a great summary, Erica. Thank you. That was fantastic. So she had noted that one of the attendees was from a labor union. And so when we were talking about trying to do a project in Ned and trying to have a little local demo site, we were talking about getting points for apprenticeship. So teaching folks how to install solar and work with those kind of things, and also local work, so advertising for local work. And because we had to shift, because we went in with our hopes for this lovely solar array in Ned and had to shift with, okay, it's going to be remote, but maybe we can, you know, work towards an array that's in the town as one of the SAP's goals, you know, of a demo site. But really our work is to do a lot of advertisement for the subscriptions. But the other piece that the labor union fellow had mentioned was that even if we shift it to another location, we can have folks there doing apprenticeships, so we can still get some points for that. So he was really keen on that piece, and I wanted to add that. I think that Erica pretty much covered it. Like she said, US Solar was happy to work with us, and I think we kind of came into the meeting feeling like, you know, we don't have the money, we don't know where we want to do it in the town. And they kind of shifted us, and US Solar was excellent. They really guided us through the process of like, this is going to be a harder process for you guys. this will make it less challenging in the bid process. And so they really just outlined so many things. And Karen, I bet you've got some thoughts we hadn't added.
This was a really good series of meetings. The format, the people that were there, the really concrete solutions. You know, people brought problems, and then we had working groups consisting of private companies and clean energy experts, all working together to come up with solutions for problems. So this was sponsored by Colorado Solar Storage Association and Solar Energy Industries Association also played a role in sponsoring this. And I hope, thank you so much, Erica, for getting us involved in this. I think it was you who did. No? Whoever did, Cynthia, I hope that
I blame Erica. I think it was Erica.
I hope we can continue to
Did it
be
me?
involved in things
I
like
don't think
this.
it was. Yeah, I thought it was great. It was a really neat format. I was grateful that they let our kind of big group come in. And of course, you know, Ned, mountain style, we come in slow. So like Larry took some time to get there. There was some, you know, sound quality issues like we do. But they just like at the end when we left, they said, Ned has this really great and like, what did they say? Well-planned project or something like that, you know? And we were like, yeah, we sure do. Thanks. But yeah, I really liked the format. It was fantastic. And it was really cool to see how we came in just like, we know what we want, but we don't know how to get there. And they kind of framed everything for us in ways, and they just really tackled the problem. I mean, they tackled it at lunch. Like we went to lunch, like we talked for a while before we left for lunch, just to kind of get on the same page if we thought, because we started the morning with, we want a local array, and then shifted after lunch to, all right, let's buy it somewhere else and just do a lot of advertisement. Because ultimately, I think what we concluded was, while I think residents would love to have a showy piece, you know, to have this showcase piece, like this is in our town and we're doing this. I think really what many people would like is price. I think they'd like cheaper energy. And especially for renters who can't put solar on their roof, and especially for renters in crummy houses that leak a lot and they're paying a lot for their energy costs to have reduced rent for a crummy place. So I think that the subscriber opportunity for the Sustainability Advisory Board and for, you know, what we present as our group and really getting people involved and the public involved to get that filled. Because like Erica and I think Karen had mentioned, you know, it was half of the 80466 zip code. So that's all the people in our outside who like to call themselves Nederland and shop, but they're not actually in the town boundaries. So some of those would be able to subscribe. And then I think, Eric, as you were saying, and then at a certain point, we would have to open it up. So then it would be subscribers from anywhere who could in Colorado. Would that be correct?
Yeah, and that we would leave up to the developer. So they would really decide kind of who they would need to reach out to. And Karen mentioned, you know, let's collaborate with Boulder County. And so I reached out to them today to see kind of who we should connect with and who may be able to kind of discuss this with us and kind of help with this development process, and then ultimately decide if they could collaborate with us on this project. But it may be something where we keep it to Nederland residents, and then perhaps we could open up to Boulder County, and then it would have to go larger at some point. But really neat opportunity. And I think we did, like, we actually were really pretty well organized. A couple things, like I didn't know there was solar on the elementary school, like you should know that. But there is, and Karen was really great about like educating us. But you know, I think it's a project we've been looking at for 5+ years in town. And so that really helped. And we've had lots of conversations around what our opportunities are over the last 5 years. So exciting. But I'd love, Billy, like Whitney, Melody, like what questions do you have? What could we be missing? what is research we've already done that could help in this process and this development stage? Like, please, share your thoughts.
I would not be worried about finding subscribers. I mean, hard to know who is or isn't going to sign up in NED proper, but Boulder County, I think, has a fairly limitless appetite for community solar, particularly since all that new construction in Boulder County is often required to have solar, and if they don't want it on their house, I think community solar is an option for them. I'm not totally sure about that, but I think so. And there's never enough, so people just have to put it on their houses whether they like it or not.
That's helpful. Whitney, who else would you recommend? Like, we may get a proposal from US Solar, which is kind of the plan. We're also going to need to reach out to other developers that are bidding in Excel territory for community solar gardens. Who else comes to mind that we should make sure that we reach out to so that we have a competitive process and we have this RFP process?
Right. I am not entirely in the know, but I can find out from the people at Namaste who do know. I mostly just know about residential things. I know we have done development projects, but it's not our primary. So I can reach out to those people and ask them.
So, Eric, I have some statistics about the 80466 zip code. So there are 1,929 housing units. In NED, we have 700. Population is 3,338. In NED, it's 1,419, something like that, close to 1,500. I thought that might be helpful with our outreach, just to understand what we're talking about there in 80466 versus.
Yeah, Karen, I can send you
Very helpful.
the community energy report from 2021. And it also has the baseline is 2018. So you can see it gives you at least an idea of the population that they're pulling from and the housing and residents and things like that. I did reach out to Partners in Energy to see if we could have a specific town of Nederland synopsis as well. So if we can get that, that'll be very clear for us, like what the town of Nederland picture is on its own. So I haven't heard from them yet, but I will let you know.
Karen, what was that other community you were talking about?
Boulder County versus NED.
Yeah, county. Okay, thanks.
And then
Billy,
I would only add one of the last things that we talked about was when we were considering sites. So when we were kind of working hard to consider sites, and we thought a lot about having something in NED and, or something close by, we also thought to talk to Kayla Evans to see if that's something she would want on her development. I think what Karen found in their development code for Boulder County is that she could just do it as a use by right. Or was that by review use? But it's something that could be done on her ranch. And I don't know if she still has desires of doing the affordable housing. I mean, she came to the town in 2015 to first present that, and has been delayed in her process through the intergovernmental agreement and the town, the BOT having to figure out what they want to do on that. Past BOTs discussed it, but didn't come to a conclusion. So either it terminates this year, or the town signs another one, or, has revisions in the county. In the discussions, the county has a ton of revisions, and they have really stringent requirements for Kayla specifically. Like they wanted to have her have 50% affordability. I don't know if it was like in perpetuity, like 20 years or 25 years, but that's like more than they put for themselves. And so Kayla felt, like she wanted to do this development, but she felt like it was, it was pretty harsh. But I think she's just kind of been like trying to plow forward on it. But we thought about talking to her to see if that's something she wanted, because what she was looking for with the affordable housing was to provide a need that NED needed, and to have sustaining income for the ranch, because she doesn't have kids. And so, she and her partner don't have kids. And so, I don't know if anyone has talked to her about it, but I thought that would be you know, we talked about that option at the summit amongst ourselves, and kind of talked about it with the folks, the group, looking at our challenge. And so maybe that's could be something down the line.
Yeah,
And that-
I did talk to Kayla. I want to say it was last week actually, and I know that she does want to continue moving forward with her housing project. And like you said, the halt on that is the IGA. So I know the BOT is working on some annexation policies, and if they can get that passed, then they're hoping that the IGA will get approved. So then Kayla could possibly move forward with an annexation process, you know, early next year. But we have to, I'm not sure that she'd want to just put a solar garden up. I think that she needs the funding and the investment of the housing developers in order to be able to do the infrastructure of solar as well. But she's definitely into as much solar as they can get in that kind of housing development area.
I figured so. I figured, you know, if that was something she could add, you know, to her, because she's tried to add things that make it desirable to the town to get over those who oppose, and there was opposition in Eldora. So, and
Yeah,
it's
the last thing I
so Boulder
remember
County
her
was really
saying
hearing
to
that.
us as the sustainability board was that all of every single townhome is going to have solar on it, as well as the 2 apartment buildings, and they felt like it was going to produce more than their development would require, and she was open to some ground mounted panels alongside of that.
Awesome.
Cynthia, one thing to add there is, you know, we have talked to Kayla a few times about energy, like Melody's referencing. And years ago, we were actually approached by some developers to actually develop a large solar array on some of that property. So at the time, we didn't necessarily have our pieces together. And I think things have evolved. But I think either way, the cost of that land is going to be much more expensive. And developing, you know, if you want to go into the community solar garden realm, then that's a whole different beast. Versus like a developer on its own and then trying to sell that energy to Excel, which is a potential, but I don't know how that could be regulated. Excel is they have a monopoly and a monopsony. They're the only purchaser and the only seller of energy, and so we can't sell energy. So something to think about, and that's where that community solar garden model is so unique to Colorado. We have had it since 2012, which was referenced in the summit yesterday. It is one of the oldest community solar garden programs in the country, but there are some hurdles. And now being able to do a 5 megawatt project versus the 2 megawatt cap, you know, up until a few years ago is really exciting because we have that economy of scale. But we really need to think about the overall cost if we want to be competitive in that community solar garden model. So just make sure we're all on the same page, but if we could get a solar garden on Kayla's property, like that would be fantastic. But we've been talking about it for 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, she needs to get approved. She needs to get in the town of Nederland, and that's, you know, going to be a long process still.
Well, Melody, she can, Boulder County does allow solar gardens in forestry zoned unincorporated property. And so, you know, she could build that without annexing into the town. And then US, you know, not that I'm promoting this idea, or I think it's the right thing for her to do financially, but US Solar mentioned how she could lease that property. So that would provide her income, sustaining income.
Mm-hmm. But it's thanks for the update, Melody. I hadn't heard, you know, about where Kayla was at in a long time. Like it was a couple of years ago, I feel like, the last time that she came forward publicly. So and then really it just got wrapped around the axle of the IGA discussions for the BOT. So
Cynthia, she's been presenting to the boards. She presented on the Bobcat Ridge project within the last few months to SAB.
oh, okay.
And I
I'm
think
sorry,
she's
and I don't attend all the BOT meetings.
no,
So
SAB meetings, yeah. But
okay.
and I would hope that you did not attend all the meetings. That's way too many meetings.
Miranda does. That's what she gets paid bucks for. I try to have a little bit of a life in my off time, just a teeny bit, but she's yeah.
I have a question. Could the 5 megawatts be, does it all have to be built in place? I'm just curious. I mean, say you build some more, say she puts some in and can't do the 5, but the rest goes like, I don't know, on Eastern Plains is some cheap place to build.
So that's kind of what we were just talking about, Billy, is like, do we have a token array that's smaller and it's still connected to a larger array somewhere else?
Okay.
Logistically, it's pretty difficult. There was a project proposed with 3 different plots in 2013 in Nederland, and it was not approved at the time. But there was 3 separate land parcels. One was off Ridge, one was off Magnolia, and there was another one, I don't know exactly where in town. And that was the exact intention of that. But at the time, there was a number of hurdles, and I can't speak to the exact challenges, but it was not approved. So it's something that's been explored by residents almost 10 years ago now. And we also talked about, like, could we take municipal buildings and, put more solar on the town shop, more solar on the wastewater treatment plant, town hall, community solar or community center. And the reality is like, that gets really complicated, and it's actually not able to be done based on how Excel operates community solar gardens, because those individual properties, it would have to be related to their demand. We couldn't like.
It all goes to their meters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we were going to do a brief recap. We've got 25 minutes left to continue our discussion. And what we were talking about was height. Now, I want to do some more research on this. But I looked up a couple before our meeting as we were talking about height. So thankfully, Karen had sent some stuff from SoulSmart, and that had Brownsville, Texas, Adams County, and she also sent the link for Boulder County, which Erica screenshotted. I sent that this morning. And we are looking at height, and all of those talk about over 5 feet. And when I did some cursory research, that's a lot of what I saw was 5 feet, 3 to 5 feet at different places. And if you guys want me to, I can, provide a spreadsheet of however many municipalities you want to see in it for our next meeting. So we can, if we want to put a pin in it and talk more about height, I can add more to that. What I would add is what I saw this morning. Crested Butte had some height regulations. Tops of solar panels must not protrude more than 6 feet above the roof deck, the parapet, or the highest structure on the side of the building. There are differing regulations for historic cone zones and historic buildings, and they utilize a plane of 40 degrees above the horizontal from the highest structure on the building. They can't be visible from a point 6 feet above the curb opposite the primary street frontage. So they've got some, due to the historic buildings, some interesting ways to try to figure out that building height. They don't allow freestanding ground mounts. They allow them if there's no other reasonable solution, and they have to follow criteria. So among that, they cannot be over 18 feet above grade, cannot be in front yards or side yards or adjacent to streets, and the hardware, poles, and etc. must be disguised by landscaping. So they still don't really want to see it. Awnings and porch roofs may be considered. So obviously those look like conditional reviews. Leadville, it looks like roof mounted solar can exceed the maximum height by 10%. So it's looking at that in a different method. The same for legally non-conforming structures. Building mounted structures shall not exceed roof line of pitched roof, and solar collectors on flat roofs shall have a 3-foot setback. ground mount panels shall not exceed 25 feet. So I can send this all to you guys. I was going to add a few more towns in there just to take a look at it, but it was just a Word doc. I hadn't dumped it into a spreadsheet. I was just trying to add a little context to what Karen had provided. So do we want to take some more time to talk about this view of building height with solar panels, or do we want to start talking lot coverage?
The only thing I'd say is I like what Whitney brought or emailed today about from the county that I think it's county city of Boulder, that if you want to build something on your lot, you have to prove it doesn't shade your neighbor's lot more than allowed per the area of the city's rule. I think that would be, I mean, what I like about that rule is it gives you some flexibility on the height, but it kind of helps with regard to, you know, the neighbors that are not going to like something. That's just my thoughts.
So
Do you think that creates a unnecessary barrier to solar?
Well,
For-
for some and not for others. And I think, I mean, again, like I said last week, I don't think our goal here is to just, you know, completely open it up with absolutely no barriers. I mean, Karen and I had a good talk earlier this, or had a few days ago last week, I guess, and talked about, talk through the heights, you know, and maybe a certain amount of height is something I feel like, you know, I personally am okay with, and possibly we could get through the BZA and the PC and the BOT, but I do think ultimately I want to reduce the barriers and take them away where we can, but I also feel like, you know, it can't, I don't think if we open it up as a free for all, it's just going to, I don't think it's going to be met with agreement through those.
To be clear, the rules in City of Boulder they're not about installing solar, they're about building stuff. So buildings, fences, mostly they're about buildings. And so in addition to like maximum building heights and, you know, building envelopes and setbacks and whatnot, they also have this sort of the final barrier of what you can or can't build is it going to create too much shade on your neighbor's property? Which is mostly, as far as I can tell, it's mostly just pain in the ass, but but I don't really know how, like, I'm not a builder. I don't build houses in the City of Boulder. So I don't know how much of a hassle it is or isn't. And if it's ever really the deciding factor, it might just be an extra layer of rules that doesn't matter. It's just more paperwork. I'm not sure.
I could see being a bigger deal in old towns, say, or places like that than in other parts of
Right.
property. But some of it is where's your building on your property compared to your neighbor, you know, with regards to aspect.
And
or,
in
know.
the City of Boulder, there's sort of three different categories in the city of what the rules are. There's sort of one area of the city that's kind of meant to like protect south-facing yards and walls, and like it's the south side of a house, and another part where it's really just meant to protect the roof, and another part where like you're on your own, man. It sounds pretty lean. It's not like, you know, obviously if you in a place with small lots, if you build a house at all, it's going to make shade, and it's going to make shade that probably touches the neighbor's property. But the most lenient, or I guess the most restrictive, I guess, for the neighbors wanting to build a new house is an area of the city where, like on my property, I would imagine a 12-foot tall, totally opaque fence on my property line, and whatever the neighbor does can't make more shade than that. Which seems pretty reasonable.
Totally.
I mean, it probably means they can't build a 35-foot tall house right, and that's in the area that I think has, like, you know, larger lots. Because even a 2-story house, if you know, setbacks were like 5 feet from the property line, if it's, you know, an area in Old Town where things are kind of right next to each other, then yeah, that house at all is taller than a 12-foot fence. But there is another area of the city where it's a 25-foot opaque fence, and you can't make more shade than that. And then the third area was there's no rules if you want your actually, I couldn't tell if you want your property protected, you need to do something, or if you want to put any shade at all on the neighbor's property, you need to do something. I couldn't tell. But yeah, anyways, so that was how it works. That sense.
Whitney, out of curiosity, Karen had something, so I don't, I hope I don't want to detour her off of her thought, but when you guys are preparing, you know, when your design team is preparing solar plans, and I don't tend to see this a lot, but I don't know if I've ever seen it. I would imagine in the city of Boulder, the companies would have to add a layer in the design, right? So there would be some plan showing that it's not shading, or that shows what a 12-foot or 25-foot opaque fence would ostensibly do. Is that part of the plans that you see in the city of Boulder?
Yes, no. The only time we see that is for tilt-ups on flat roofs. For flush-mounted solar, the shadow of the house is the same as the shadow of the house has always been, so it's not my problem. But for flat roofs with tilt-up arrays, the array does stick up higher than the roof, so theoretically it makes a shadow. I mean, in reality, it makes a shadow, but not just theoretically. So in the city of Boulder, we do have to show that the shadow created by those solar panels up high, we have to show where the shadow goes. And since it's on the rooftop, usually the shadow doesn't even leave the building. And if it's, right on if the array, tilt-up goes to the north edge of the roof or something, then the shadow leaves the building, but it usually doesn't leave the property. So I've never had it be a problem, and I've never even had to compare it to that imaginary 12-foot or 25-foot fence. I've always just drawn the little lines on there and been like, "See, jerk, it doesn't even leave the property. Leave me alone."
So there's a program that you can just kind of like tinker in and do that. Like that's something that solar companies can, have the capacity to do. I mean, I think that added something like this, although I like it, it's probably we're going to be splitting hairs in Ned, and it could be pretty challenging. And I, although I Billy's thought of like, don't blow down all the barriers. But I think, just saying to some folks, sorry, can't help you. It's probably not going to go over super great, while trying to thread this needle of like, what's going to get through the commission and the BZA and the board of trustees, but, also know that the public is going to have some feedback about that. And we understand there's a lot of one-story houses in places in the town where, if you're putting a flat roof on that thing, you're probably going to be having some shade on your neighbors. And so maybe we can chat with that. But Karen, I want to double back on you. You had a thought and you were going to say something and I interrupted you.
Oh, no, that's fine, Cynthia. Thank you for noticing that and coming back to me. I'll be sure to, advocate for myself in the future to talk. So I guess my concern would be that in Boulder, this is a general rule for construction. It doesn't just apply to solar panels. So I would think if we want to add regulations concerning shading, we need to start with buildings and then make solar panels part of that. That's it.
And in the case of City of Boulder, solar panels are nowhere mentioned in that code. It's just code about building stuff usually being houses. It doesn't say stuff either, but it specifically does not say solar. It's about
structures.
Yeah, it's about protecting the neighbor's ability to put solar on their house or to use, passive heating through the windows and just order.
Or have a garden, right?
Or have a garden. Exactly. Yeah. In some parts of the city, anyways. So I feel like that is more farther than we want to go in Nederland for now. I'm like, we're just like baby steps here. And I think most of that can be addressed by like building height, building envelope, that sort of thing. That's mostly it. The solar access thing is just I think it's mostly another layer of paperwork on top of that. but it's the same essential purpose. Somebody can't build a giant skyscraper right next to your house. And in this case, they can't build it because it would be shady, but they also can't build it for lots of other reasons. So I think those other reasons are sufficient.
They seem to be doing it in Martin Acres in Boulder. You know, like it's just popping up in Martin Acres, and then there's the little cabins right next to them, and that's been going on for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Like seriously, every time I walk through that neighborhood, I'm like, holy moly. Okay.
And then you
So
asked the question, is it the equipment or the software to do that? Does that just exist? Yes and no. When I've done it, I've always done it very manually. I've like got out my pencil and paper and done a little bit of trig and figured out where the shadow goes. And I've gotten out my SketchUp and I've drawn it on there as two little sticks from the corners of the solar panels that are farthest away. And it works. Anybody can do it. It's just
you're old school.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So although that's a consideration, Melody, Karen, Erica, Billy, do you guys have any thoughts on that shade analysis? Is that gonna get us wrapped around the axle with solar and trying to, you know, achieve our goals of promoting it and not creating more barriers?
I think a shade analysis specifically for solar panels would be something that we shouldn't be doing. And it's because of, I think we need to start, if we want to add regulations concerning shading, we should start with buildings. And then solar panels would be an extension of that.
That's a really great point, Karen. Thank you.
I personally don't even want to go there for buildings at the moment. I think there are easier ways to prevent people from building something giant. It's like just say you can't build anything giant, and that can be enough. You don't have to make imaginary walls around the neighbor. And then the reason this all came up is because it was one of the terms listed in the definitions back at the beginning was solar access, and there was, if we're not going to talk about it, we don't need to define it. I think we can just leave that out of the definitions for now. And, you know, planning, zoning, codes, et cetera, is always going to be an iterative process. If it wants to get added in later, that can happen. I think for now, we should just focus on the low-hanging fruit of not letting people build skyscrapers by just prohibiting that directly.
So I just want to clarify, when I said we should start with buildings, I wasn't talking about this group. I was talking about we, the town. And not advocating that we do that, but just to say if we wanted to, that's where we should start.
I gotcha. I got that. Thanks, Karen.
Yeah, I guess to go back to building height, because I'm probably the biggest stickler on this of anyone here, or definitely. You know, if we decide on, and probably Whitney's, you know, give us the best guidance of the actual number of feet, you know, on a flat roof, how high do you need to go? I just, you know, we pick a number. We've been talking 5 feet. I mean, personally, I was surprised to hear Crested Butte like goes 6 feet, or you know, whatever. But they even go above the parapet. Like to me, I would be more apt to say, let's say 5 feet from the roof deck. And then the parapet will provide some shading in and of itself. 5 feet seems like enough. Maybe it isn't. So if it isn't, we've picked that number based on what's enough. But I would say above the roof deck. And that way a parapet does some shading potentially. And if there's no parapet, there's no shading. But that would be a little bit more of a you know, compromise where we're saying 5 feet higher. But if there's parapet, you know, that'll do some of the height. You know, keep it to the deck and the parapet will reduce that time.
So it's minus 5 feet. A lot of times tilt-ups are only like 2 or 3 feet. It could be maybe 4 or 5 feet is a nice number to just make it easy. And I don't know much about solar thermal. That's a lot bigger, but it's also a lot less common.
Is there much of that anymore? It seems like people are just, it's cheaper to go PV and just get an electric water heater.
You know,
exactly.
the visitor center has a panel on it. And when I asked them about it when they first did it, they said it's very warm, and that it's made it a lot toastier. I think the town could put solar thermal on some of its buildings. There's a lot of DIY stuff on YouTube about how to do it. So you could pay a company, which will cost you, depending on the size of your house, you know, probably 2 to 10 grand or something. What I was seeing a couple of years ago was like 2 to 6 grand, depending on the size of the room that you're trying to heat. But you can also do it yourself. You could make a box and paint it black, or put silver in it and hang screening in it, or use cans or ducting or something like that. And all you need is a fan, and you could get a solar fan for the purpose of it. So I've thought about doing that myself. Like, do I want something a little rustic, or do I want something a little more fancy? But you know, I haven't seen a lot of it in the town, but I think a lot of these drafty old buildings could really, really do, that would really add, like Crosscut and other places, it could really add to, you know, their ability. And that's, they're not doing it on the roof. It's just, you know, flat on the wall mount, just trying to catch that low sun. We should do more.
Something to add to that, I agree, solar thermal, few and far between. There's a big challenge with water reservoirs. I know my neighbor has a 12,000 gallon tank for his solar thermal system. And the only way that he could do that was because he donated it to the local fire department on Magnolia. And so that system had to have a faucet on it that the fire department could hook up to and use it if there was a fire. But the normal amount of water that you can have in a reservoir is like 1,200 gallons. So that's a limitation for solar thermal. And then there is a legislation that just came through. Hopefully it'll get signed by the governor soon for heat pumps and helping support heat pumps in communities. So I do think the conversation is more realistic for heat pumps at this point than solar thermal systems. They're pretty clunky, and there's not a lot of great installers or competent installers in our area. Heat pumps are a similar conversation, but hopefully that'll improve soon, especially with some funding at the state level and federal. Federal's got some heat pump funding right now as well.
Heat pumps are
There are
definitely
lots of
growing nationally.
Set up
Yeah.
solar thermal, from like a simple DIY thing to what, like Cynthia was talking about, to a much more complicated. There are systems that don't use big reservoirs at all. There's systems that do. Like, there's lots of ways to do it. One way or another, it's actually some pretty intense plumbing, or some pretty intense demands on the plumbing, which is part of the reason it's not so common anymore. Because, you know, solar thermal on your roof during the day, even in the winter, the liquid in there might be 300 degrees, and then at night it might be like -5. That's a lot to ask from some plumbing. So in principle, solar thermal I really like. It's really, like, theoretically simple. You know, you want heat. The sun is hot. You put something in the sun, it gets hot. Great. That should work, and it does work. But the more fancy you want to make it, the more, like, it exponentially gets more complicated. So what's much more common these days is solar electric, putting, you know, PV panels on your roof and then switching to electric heat, especially via something like a heat pump.
Yeah, it's just so much cheaper for maintenance, and maintenance over time and operation costs of solar thermal
And it
is
doesn't
really kind of a bugger. I think if you're living lower elevation in New Mexico or Arizona, it's one thing, but up here it's kind of another.
You cut out a lot, Billy. I didn't catch what you said. I'm sorry.
Operation and maintenance costs of solar thermal is really why it's kind of being pushed to the side, and just add some more panels and electrify your home, and go electric water heating, go electric space heating. That's where heat pumps are coming. They're already doing well in Europe, Canada. I mean, and they're coming. They're really coming into the U.S. pretty hard. So
Something to add to that too is, you know, the few solar thermal systems I'm familiar with, they have to have PV to supplement in the dark, colder times of the year, like December, January, February. So, and I mean, it does sound like PV is just more of the solution, and then electrifying. But I don't think we should stop anybody from solar thermal if that's what their heart desires.
Right. And the only reason I brought that up is because the solar thermal panels are physically larger than PV panels. And so if we're talking about a flat roof and sticking up more than 5 feet, I don't feel bad about limiting solar thermal panels, because anything with a flat roof is usually a pretty new building. They're not going to put solar thermal in. They're just going to put PV in. It's going to be fine. And if that 5-foot limitation is the thing that prevents them from putting solar thermal in, like, I don't feel bad about that.
They can go for a special review for a
There you go.
variance.
Yeah.
And since Billy's on the,
I'm having a lot of
Zoning
cutout
Planning
here, guys.
Commission?
I'm really sorry. I don't know if this is just on my end, or if anyone else is noticing this, but I'm sorry to interrupt you, Karen. What were you saying?
Wait, Karen, Cynthia, can you turn off your video? Because I'm not getting the cutout, and I wonder if that might help.
Yeah, I'm not either.
Yes. Yes. All right, go ahead.
for the geothermal panels, okay, the PV panels, and then we have solar that heats water. And so what's that type of panel called? Geothermal?
Solar thermal.
Solar thermal, thank you. Geothermal is different. Okay, so if we have a property that wants to put solar thermal panels on that exceed the maximum building height by over 5 feet, then they have to go for a special review.
I'm sorry. It's even with my camera off, it's cutting out, and I don't know.
Oh, I'll turn off my video.
So I apologize. Oh, would you? Yeah. Let me just see if I cut it, because it was cutting out every other word for the last 3 folks. Property was it solar thermal panels or just solar panels to exceed building height?
Right, we were having a discussion about solar thermal panels and how possibly those would require a higher extension off a flat roof. And so we were saying, well, we're not too concerned about that because more PV panels are more widely used and needed than the solar thermal panels. And then I said, well, we're not really saying that people, couldn't have higher solar thermal panels, but they'd have to come before a special review.
Okay, I caught that.
If they're exceeding whatever our limitations are that we're deciding, can be done without a special review.
Gotcha.
I'm sure you'll fix up those words so it'll sound smart. You usually do that, Cynthia,
I try.
in the minutes.
It's really because I'm trying to make things sound concise in the minutes. Because at meetings, people will be like, oh yeah, about that other thing. And you're not going to write in your summary, or your minutes, then they said about that other thing, about a topic that happened, 2 topics ago. So I just jam it all together and I try to make it sound really nice for posterity's sake. And then cut out all the screamy drama. I can help it. Because I can't put in Ned's minutes, but I used to in Ward's. But in Ned's minutes, I don't get to do that. So I do try.
So I have a suggestion for the notes in the minutes for this subcommittee. Rather than jotting down what everyone says, if instead we keep track of what our decisions are and just summarize those, document those. I sort of think that's more important than what every individual is saying.
Okay.
What our agreements are, what we've decided as far as what the regulations will be, and then we can kind of move forward from that.
Okay, great suggestion. So we didn't really conclude with the height. We're 2 minutes over the end of our meeting here, and we didn't really conclude, although we talked about some other things, and we can mold. I'm sorry?
I like 5 feet. I'm on board. 5 feet
like-
above the maximum.
I like 5 feet too.
I like to propose 5 feet above the roof deck, not the.
Agreed.
What Billy said.
Okay.
A parapet so the parapet potentially, you know, reduces the actual height, but it's still, you know, 5 feet is the construction area, which is probably all they need. 5 feet
Above the roof deck. And I mean, obviously
deck, which might not
compliant
be
with
5
building
feet
and
above.
fire codes.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So just to be very specific about this, if the roof deck is 35 feet, then we allow the panels to go up to 40 feet. If the
Right.
roof deck, okay, is 36 feet, then we allow the panel to go up to 41 feet.
Yes.
Yes.
And do we want to add something about the solar shading assessment and require that from
I
installers?
think so.
No.
But
No,
any other thoughts from the group about that?
Billy, you just made a motion. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, I'm making I guess I'm making a motion if we're yeah, think about doing that formally. Make a motion that we say, you know, let's see, you know, that a maximum height, you know, solar arrays, rooftop solar, um, let's see, is general, well, specifically I'll say rooftop solar can exceed the height of the building by 5 feet above the roof deck. Anyway, as we're, you know, without saying it, generally isn't even going to be, it's going to not be applicable. You know, if a pitched roof, it's going to not go higher, but I'll say it can go up to 5 feet above the roof deck, you know, not counting parapet. And if higher, would need to go through special review.
So here's a question.
If higher,
Would need to go through a special review use.
okay.
I'll
In,
second that. Oh, is there a discussion?
yes, I have a question. In that stating of it, we haven't explicitly said, we also just accidentally said if your house is 20 feet tall, your solar can only stick up to 25 feet. Is that what we meant to say?
Oh, no. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I guess, no, that's a good point. Yeah, because if your house is 20 feet tall, you're not really tied to the 5 feet, I guess. It's really the maximum building
You
height.
cannot- Yes, you cannot exceed maximum building heights.
So maybe we could say, you know, rooftop solar shall not exceed maximum building height, you know, and fix the words if you want, as needed, but except where the buildings are already at or near building height, they may go 5 feet above the roof deck.
Okay. This is what rooftop solar shall not exceed maximum building height except where at or near building height
Maximum building height,
5 feet above roof deck.
they can go up to 5 feet above the roof deck.
Go up to.
So
What?
I'm not sure about that
Better
wording
just,
there.
go ahead, Karen.
Okay, yeah, fix the wording. That's
I think at or near, I mean, what we could say that solar panel height cannot exceed 5 feet over the maximum building height. Or we could say solar panel height cannot exceed 5 feet over the building height. So the difference there is one has the word maximum and one does not. I would be okay with either one of those because I think that would give people enough flexibility. But the at or near part is not specific enough.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. I mean, and I think you and I, when we talked about, was trying to you talk about it in the positive versus the negative. So instead of shall not exceed, we might say, you know, rooftop solar may exceed.
There are lots of examples already. We can just find them.
Yeah,
You can use somebody else
Yeah.
already work.
Oh, right, the examples. I
Yeah.
will type something into the chat. As
Could
a
you send it in
proposal.
an email to me too? Because we're gonna be ending this meeting here. We're running over time already.
Sure, I'll do both right now.
Oh, thank you. Okay, cool. And then we have examples of that language elsewhere, as Whitney noted. But something to that degree, like what we're seeing already, which is to say you can't exceed the maximum building height, like except by 5 feet, up to 5 feet. And, otherwise they would have to go for a variance. The
Yeah, and
process.
that 5 feet is measured from the roof down, not from the top of the parapet.
Yes, yes, that's an
Yes,
important one.
I'm
measure
almost
from
wondering
roof deck.
if it's better to say that only existing buildings
Yes,
can add solar panels that go above the building height, but
yes,
Yes.
that new buildings build up to that height and then add their solar panels another 5 feet.
yes, totally.
Yes.
It's a big deal.
All right, new development cannot exceed.
So what do you think about the statement I put in chat?
Let's see here. Roof mounted solar energy may exceed. Existing. We want to add Melody's point of roof mounted solar energy systems on
Existing.
existing buildings may exceed the height limits applicable to each district. I mean, because it's the max
By 5 feet above
35
roof deck.
feet for every single zone is 35 feet. That's the max building height period for everybody. So if we want to say to each district, that's fine, or we could just say, the maximum building height because it's a standardized across the town. Either way, but thanks, Erica. You're amazing.
Thanks, Whitney. Thanks, Erica.
And
No,
thanks, Whitney.
Yeah, no, the two things,
Fantastic.
that's perfect. The two things I would add is that, yeah, I think you're right. It can take, the district park can come out because 35 feet is 35 feet, but,
Maximum building height is
are
what I would
adding-
say.
yeah, maximum building height, but I would say, existing buildings, and I would say 5 feet above roof deck. I think that's important.
Above roof deck, yes.
Okay,
There's no reason to go 5 feet above the parapet. That would just
why
be a waste
why
of
do we say existing?
Because what Melody's point was, is that we could allow solar for buildings that already built over the building height, but ostensibly new development should not plan to build over the building
Yeah,
height.
and they should, and they
Change
don't
their
need to,
design.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to change their design, they can go before the Board of Zoning Adjustment to
Right.
talk about exceeding their building height on the design, if they've paid for designs before they've come to talk to me about what the requirements are. So it's really limiting the amount of people who are going to do that. Otherwise, what's going to happen, Karen, is Caribou Ridge is just going to be like at 40 feet. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Honestly, that's the part I don't agree with.
I think you're in the minority on that one.
And yeah, it could be. I just want to make my point here is that I see builders as maximizing their usable space, and they're doing that for economic reasons. And so I don't see them reserving space for solar panels. So I can see this as a barrier. And
most of those high-end homes are gonna have a pitched roof, so it's moot. But, yeah, I just think there's gotta be some limits here. Sorry.
oh, okay, so I think what we should do is have this as a question at our next meeting.
Okay.
And just get a vote from everyone. And just the two options.
Sounds good.
So I could write, let me get the two options in here. Roof.
And then just email that to me, and then I'll
Yeah.
include that for our next agenda and sort of in the summary of kind of where we got to is needs vote. Because
Okay.
I mean, on a on a con side, the majority of the town's built out, right? So, what we're dealing with are existing buildings. So if there's incongruencies with that, where they're encroaching, then there's a lot of it, potentially. But what we're trying to do, which is just a standard in zoning, that those who came before were able to get away with things that changed over time, and new development doesn't. And so they change those regulations over time for new development for conformity. I think we're not going to get anywhere if we say, oh yeah, everyone can do that. I think that the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Adjustment and possibly the Board of Trustees would be concerned about that, because people would plan to build over the building height. And then why don't we just change the maximum building height like Ron Mitchell would like us to do to 40 feet? That's what he wants to do. But I think that if you say existing, then you're saying, hey, those folks who are here, if they're above, and we know there's a whole heck of a lot of buildings that are 1 story that are not going to, be close to exceeding it. But we do know there's some that probably do. I don't know how many, but that would give them a mechanism. And, the only other thought I have on that is, what if my gigantic 3-story house that's over 35 feet, parked right next to Billy Giblin's house in Old Town, I want to exceed the maximum height by 5 more feet, and it's going to shade out his property. And so that would be like the only caveat that I would think of with.
That's where I think it needs to go for special review. And that's where we just can't have a free for all. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
it's not,
So-
it's never going to get agreed to.
Billy, could you type in what you'd like to see
Yeah.
as number 2? I typed in number 1 is what I'm proposing. Roof-mounted solar energy systems may exceed maximum height limit by 5 feet. I don't know that we need to put anything about parapet in there, because I think the
No, I'm gonna say above roof deck, and I won't mention the parapet, but that makes a big difference, because to go just higher, I mean, again,
so
I
the
know this
roof.
is big deal, but you're gonna have to bend.
I guess my question is the when we're looking at building heights, do we include the parapet? I don't think we do, right? I think
Yes. Yes.
we do. So Cynthia, is that right? That when that the maximum that builders can only go up, they have to reserve space for their parapet, so they can only go to like 32 feet maximum building height, and then the 3 feet would be the parapet.
I mean, I think it's contained in the fire regulations for fire access, of them being able to get around the panels. And so I think that that's how that's addressed. Because like at a standard, as long as where they're trying to mount it isn't going to be above 35 feet, then there's not a problem. And in most cases with sloped roofs, it's not going to get to that point, as Billy had noted.
But my question is, when we're measuring the height of a building, do we include the parapet?
The building height definition is in the zoning chapter. I just want to point out we are 16 minutes over time, so
Okay.
I don't want to get too deep. But if you give me just a second, I was trying to cut and paste from the chat. Let's see here. Let me see if I have I've been looking in so many different municipal codes lately for all the subcommittees. Let me read you really quickly the definition for building height. It's, you'll like it, Karen, because it's very specific, and it includes a lot of factors. And I think that's like the way your brain works. Building height means the vertical distance measured from the average natural grade within the building footprint to the uppermost point of the roof of the building. Average natural grade is 1/2 the sum of the highest point and the lowest point that is within the building footprint. So, people have wanted to dump a ton of fill on their site, and then they're like, well, it's average natural grade. And Miranda and I have discussed this topic. Of when you add a bunch of fill, you're not dealing with the average natural grade. You've changed the average natural grade. Otherwise, everyone would dump 12 feet of fill on their property and built way up high. So, we've had that discussion, but yeah, we're looking at it. I mean, so when I'm looking at, say, solar plans, I'm considering where that max height is. And a lot of times what those solar plans will include is elevations. So they'll be showing me the building in various angles to show, here's where the solar is going to be. And they're going to show, and the flush mounts are below. And so, you know, and then I send out those plans to fire, and Rick is usually, if they're not considering fire code, he's like, go back to the drawing board. You got to factor these things in. So they're doing revisions through that building permitting process. Probably you didn't have to do that with Namaste.
So it doesn't include the parapet. So I don't know that we need to put highest point of roof deck.
Well,
Yeah.
well, I disagree. I mean, I think what I'm doing is tying it back to the roof, which is what the building height is tied to. I don't know why you want to go higher. I mean, no one, I mean, even Whitney just said 5 feet is probably more than enough than you would actually, you know, the actual.
No, I think 5 feet is fine. I'm just saying it doesn't.
5 feet above a 3-foot parapet, then you're building.
No, I wouldn't say that because that's not the building height.
Look at my wording. I didn't talk about roof parapet. I just said above roof deck.
Yeah. I guess it's okay. So I think that's redundant, but you know, that's fine. I guess really my concern there is with the existing buildings because yeah, so you're making an exception for, you're allowing okay, so you're requiring any new buildings to stay under 35 feet with their solar.
And Karen, that's a pretty typical zoning thing, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that is just how code
new
works.
construction, they're all having to, you know, zoning is typically like, if you leave it where it's at and we haven't completely outlawed it, then it's okay until you change it. So if your house is encroaching and then it's like, hey, I want to build an addition onto this encroachment. No, you can't do that. You're going to build
that's, if we looked, so we did a little bit of a survey of other municipalities, and they allow their solar panels to exceed maximum building height for new buildings in addition to existing buildings. So I would say that this is really not
fair.
Not, well, it's not consistent with what other municipalities are doing. So,
No, but it's consistent with the zoning code, because the zoning code in so many places is going to say you can't make it worse. You can't exceed. And it's consistent with like zoning style, which is those who got in at a certain time were allowed certain things. And over time, the zoning code changes and they're not. So I'm just saying, I don't agree with you on this point. I understand what you're saying. But you know, just from a zoning perspective, which is when you're doing new things, there are regulations. Old buildings, we're not requiring them to get sprinklers.
hey, I have
It's required to get
I have
sprinklers.
legal Pete here. I have to go.
Okay,
So I'll see you guys at another time.
awesome. Thanks, Karen.
Yeah, okay, bye.
All right.
Thanks, you guys.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you.
Yeah. You guys have a good day.
All right. Thanks, Billy. Bye, Melody.
Bye.